I guess I'll share a story of a couple of guys that I met about halfway through my mission in a town called Totira. One was named Manu, and he had a friend named Tutea. And Manu, we met them at a mission open house, at an open house at the church that was put on by the ward. And Manu and Tutea, Manu was about, 10 years older than Tutea. Tutea was only about 16 at the time. And Manu had a wife and a daughter, and they started taking the lessons with us. And Manu, both of them right away latched onto the lessons very quickly. Manu gained a testimony very quickly of the prophet Joseph Smith. I remember distinctly having that lesson, feeling the Spirit very strongly testify to all of us that Joseph Smith was a true prophet. The gospel was restored through him, and Manu was this guy who's covered in tattoos and was just kind of a young guy just living life. And we weren't sure about what he did with his time. He was just kind of always at home, always around. And he latched on the lessons quickly, but then as things progressed, he all of a sudden started falling away and wasn't there when we were supposed to have lessons, and we weren't sure what was happening. And we learned that Manu had a problem with drugs, with marijuana, and that he was pretty involved with the farming and the sale of marijuana. And that was basically that he had to make a choice in his life between the gospel of Jesus Christ and his livelihood. Not just, a drug problem, but how he made his money and supported his family and did basically all of his friends and his entire life. Growing up, that was his life. And Tutea was younger, and he had similar problems, but his influence was his father, who was against him joining the church, and then the influence of Manu and these friends as well. It's really interesting that Manu and his wife were ready to be baptized, but they were going to do it together. As I left the area, Manu hadn't been baptized. He still wasn't taking the lessons anymore. And a couple months after I left the area, one Monday morning, I just had an impression to call Manu, and I called their house, and Leah answered, his wife, and she said, "I'm so glad you called. You must have heard." And I said, "No, I haven't heard. What did I hear? What happened?" And she said, "Well, Manu was baptized last week, and then this week was the first time he blessed the sacrament." And there was an incredible joy to feel that Manu had overcome that difficulty in his life. It was towards the end of my mission, and I saw them again the night that I left, and I wasn't sure how things were going. I heard at that time that they had kind of become inactive again, and that was really disappointing. Tutea still was having struggles with his family and was never able to get baptized. And a couple years ago, when I went back to Tahiti, I didn't have a way of contacting them, so I just drove to their house and drove to Manu and Leia's house, and it was incredible joy to drive up to their house and to find them and to have them greet me just like old times, but to hear that Manu and Leia had been sealed in the temple and were consistently active in church. And he was the clerk in the ward bishopric, and that they were staying strong, and that Manu bore testimony to me that night when we taught that lesson about Joseph Smith, that he had that testimony then, and it stayed with him through all of his challenges and ups and downs, and still had that testimony today, and bore testimony to me of the power of the temple. And it was just a huge blessing to go back and see that people who have their lives touched, their hearts touched, may have huge difficulties to overcome in their life, and it may take a few years after, it may take a long time, but once they have that testimony, that can grow within them and keep pushing them, that it's not reliant on you as a missionary to be there to convert them, that you testifying and having the Spirit in your lessons will allow that to continue after. And if they're converted to you, and then you leave, and their testimony leaves with you. If they're converted with the Spirit, then that can continue to do work that you are not able to do after you leave. And I went back again just a few months ago and talked with them again, and they're still doing great. And it's a huge blessing to have that spirit with you as a missionary, with your lessons, as you're finding people, and as you're teaching, so that that can continue to work after you leave. I know that the missions are incredible for the missionaries, as well as for those that they teach and they serve. My mission changed a lot of who I am. It changed my personality in a lot of ways for the better. It changed because of the Tahitian people, because of a lot of that culture that I've tried to adopt into my own life, and still is difficult to do. As I think about those things, I think, man, I need to be more charitable. I need to be more loving. I know that missionary is the right thing for people to do to strengthen their testimony of the gospel. It's important that you leave with a testimony, but it's also important to know that your testimony will grow exponentially as a missionary. And if you keep close to the Spirit throughout your mission, if you study and pray like you're supposed to, that your testimony will grow and strengthen. And I know that our Heavenly Father loves all of His children. It's really neat to go throughout the world, throughout to different missions and have very similar experiences as I talk with friends, and know that Heavenly Father loves all of His children, wherever they are on this earth.